So, a forward here. The views expressed in this video are entirely my own, and come from my own research and analysis of various sources, links, and videos gathered across the internet. I am also fully aware and willing to accept the possible result that I am completely invalidated at the time of publish or at some future date, and would happily redact all of my said statements if said event were to occur. So, without any further ado, let us begin with the program. Now, on the internet, I'm just a viewer with an opinion, and we all are to some extent. There aren't really any big looming powerful hands that can grab the netlines and turn them around against or in favor of this or that item. It's always been the result of what users of the web share, interact with, and create. The only real power I and others have as content creators is creating content. Whether people agree or disagree with said content is their own choice gathered from life experience and personal viewpoints. That being said, in this free internet where one can find a positive outlet for almost any discernible opinion, an antithesis also arises, a positive outlet for every discernible anti-opinion, which is exactly why for every action the internet undertakes, it seems there also exists an equal and opposite reaction. But today, this larger issue is just the subtext for a much smaller, much more interpersonal matter I wish to express. An open letter to TotalBiscuit, the Cynical Brit. In case you don't know who TotalBiscuit, or TB as he is commonly referred to, is, he is a fairly popular gaming critic and commentator acting primarily on video sharing site YouTube. I first heard about him about a year ago thanks to the whole Gary's Incident and Guys of the Wolf debacle with DMCA takedowns and his camaraderie with fellow YouTuber Jim Sterling. I've never really watched TB at all on his channel, mostly because his videos are enormous and I am almost always super busy with full-time studentship. I mean, I don't want to sound selfish or anything, but I have a hard time trying to get myself to watch any YouTube video that runs longer than 15 minutes. Sorry. But my issue today is not TB's videos, but rather his behavior. If you've been following gamer news at all for the past 8 months, then you've by now heard of the so-called grassroots movement for better gaming journalism, Gamergate, which TB explicitly and tacitly endorses. But this video isn't even really about that either. GG is a whole nother bag of worms for an entirely different day that I will not bring up to discuss explicitly here except when acknowledging it as part of the background for points I will be making. This is a personal matter I wish to discuss that only has GG in the background. What I mostly wish to discuss here is TB's behavior around the start of Gamergate to now, which has been in my eyes to this point completely unethical and all around extremely unpleasant and very mean-spirited. I believe the proper place to start a frame for all this is back in August of 2014 when the primal form of GG was being shaped. On August 8th, Aaron Gianni published the Zoe post, a 9,000-ish word rant about his breakup with game developer Zoe Quinn, where he accuses her of infidelity, which led to allegations of Zoe trading sex for positive coverage, an allegation later proven false by Gianni himself. Jump ahead 10 days and TB made a twit-longer post about the incident as well as the DMCA takedown of YouTuber Mundane Matt's video on what was being called the Quinspiracy. In his post, TB states that if Zoe was behind the DMC takedown, then it was bad because using the DMCA to take down criticism of your product is a terrible idea and is unethical, if not in many cases flat out illegal, even though said video was not a criticism, but more or less a perpetration of libel and slander towards Miss Quinn, who suffered massive harassment after the posts and videos about the Zoe post were spread across the internet. I don't believe that this was ever TB's intention, but it is a fair assumption that at least a few of his 350,000-ish Twitter followers took this post as a means and opportunity to join in harassment of Miss Quinn, and that isn't cool. It just seems like a careless thing to do, not only bringing up awareness of what is almost a textbook case of sexual harassment, but also a thinly veiled attempt at slandering a known female member of the game development scene. But this trend continues, and gets worse. Much worse in my estimation, which leads me to my grand point here. I know you're not going to like me saying this, but it needs to be stated to you, TotalBiscuit. I think you really need to re-examine some of the things you've been saying on the internet that have either been extremely offensive, incited harassment towards others, been slanderous, or all of the above. I'm going to start my compilation with a much more recent event. On February 22nd of this year, Jim Sterling shared this article by Maya Byrne on the still ongoing abuse of trans people in society. Less than 20 minutes later, TB replied with, and I quote, "Stop killing people? As much as everyone appreciates the sentiment, that doesn't stop murderers. Real solution required." And before Mr. Sterling gave a response to this problematic attitude, TB further confounds the issue by relating the article to slacktivism, arising from an earlier discussion in which he called a single solitary tweet about male feminists asking for people to respect women evidence of the sort. When Mr. Sterling came back, a pretty uncomfortable pseudo-argument on TB's part ensues, with bits like claiming that the article was accusing him of endorsing violence, that trans people are often not killed for being trans despite the article showing evidence of such an act, as well as detracting online support groups for being ineffective or counterproductive, using Tumblr as an example. Though TB later apologized for the remark, the examples of casual disregard for trans issues and flippant egotism were not an isolated incident. Last month, TB got into a kerfuffle with Brianna Wu thanks to this derogatory post on Twitter, which she found to be quite transphobic. I later found out that TB meant this as a joke on so-called otherkin, but that does not in any way excuse his remarks, such as, "Miss Wu, I think we could go a day without hearing you lie to further your own fame on Twitter, thank you." More of which you can read here, or on the actual tweet. Cards on the table, this post reeks of transphobia, along with his earlier tirade with Jim Sterling over the article on helping victims of transphobic violence. I do not believe that these were intended out of malice, but his carelessness is very concerning. And there have been many other instances of casual or flippant insensitive remarks on the part of TB, such as Islamophobia, tacit incitement of harassment towards John McIntosh and Bob Chipman, rampant egotism, and mean-spirited dismissal of fans, or just plain old hypocrisy. The last major event I'll touch on here is the Scott Drop charity stream, because I think it highlights what I think is the core issue with TotalBiscuit's psyche at this point. Around 2 months ago, a charity stream Derp SA organized a marathon which was soon retweeted by TotalBiscuit. Obviously a nice thing to do considering the nature of the event and the large following TB has. But CoBuddy, one of the people behind the stream, was concerned. They had only a few mods for the chat box and were worried that TB's very large audience and, by no fault of his own, Gamergate Fellowship that followed him would negatively impact the stream if they were to join and watch, for fear that they may incite harassment in the chat box. In a more reasonable path, TB would have understood the organizers' concern, but instead he accused them of selfishly putting politics before charity, even though it was brought up that a lot of people may have been scared away thanks to his promotion of the event. To this, TB replied, "Yes, I'm sure that giving it 390,000 people's worth of publicity terrified entire countries." And then later, "You promoted my charity event? I fucking hate you, and I'm genuinely angry you did that." TotalBiscuit also left the retweet up, which, intentionally or not, gave at least some of his fans the impression to attack the stream for disrespecting him. And it happened. Gators came to harass the people behind the stream. TB should have known it would happen, and when presented with the possibility, he should have apologized and removed his retweet. But he didn't. At this point, it seems that TotalBiscuit has forgotten one of the principal facets of life. Actions have consequences. TB's disregard for the consequences of his actions is apparent in the aforementioned examples. He seems to act purely in the interest of defending himself instead of considering the impact of the things he's going to say. And I feel it has corrupted what I know could be a very important, valuable, and influential member of the gaming community. And I know this is not one-sided. I know TB himself has been the victim of harassment. I've been the victim of harassment. But there is no excuse for any amount of the bad behavior he has shown over the past months. None at all. TotalBiscuit, and TotalBiscuit's fans, you can do better. I can do better. We can all do better than this. Think rationally, have empathy, don't confuse base assumptions for facts, and above all else, have perspective. Know thyself, know thy viewer base, and lead by example, instead of making an example of yourself. Because I know you're better than this, TB, because we're all human, and we are all capable of great things.